Readwise Reader. Some say it's the best read it later app on the internet. Others hail it as new Pocket and Instapaper killer. But are they right? Your favorite productivity YouTuber or even Tiago Forte, the second brain GOAT, might have even raved about Readwise Reader. They talk about its magic ability to capture, process, and effortlessly funnel content into your second brain, a term that some of you second brain nerds will probably resonate with. But is it actually worth it? Or is Readwise Reader just an overhyped, overpriced subscription service? And what is it exactly? So let's break this down. So if you see my other video, I did a review on the Readwise integration app, which is different from Readwise Reader. It was really great for storing notes, ideas, and web highlights onto platforms like Notion, Roam, or Obsidian. It just felt like an overpriced Zapier. But then came along Readwise Reader. And they gave me beta access months ago, but I can't believe I wasn't looking at this a lot sooner. Readwise Reader lets you capture notes, highlight web content, subscribe to RSS feeds, upload PDFs, EPUBs, snapshot tweets, highlight YouTube transcripts, subscribe to newsletters, and provides a distraction-free reading zone. There's also AI functions, of course, because AI is just the buzzword recently. So is Readwise Reader actually living up to the hype, or is it a must-have for every single Notion nerd? Well, I'm here to help. It's my goal to bring this all together and just make this the only video that you need to watch about Readwise Reader and help you decide if it's actually worth it for you. Today, we're going to specifically break down what is Reader, how Readwise Reader works, what makes Reader different from competitors, the pros of Readwise Reader, the cons of Readwise Reader, what others are saying about it, and is it actually worth paying for it? And finally, who should actually consider something like Readwise Reader to begin with? To sweeten the deal, if you end up deciding on Readwise Reader, I contacted them for an affiliate link that will give you a special deal from them, which includes, at the time of this recording, a 60-day free trial from both Reader and Readwise. But this could change, of course. And if you want to know a secret tip, they are planning to increase their pricing, but they are grandfathering people in. Something that you should know. So if you are getting it before the increase, you're going to lock in your pricing too. And if you decide to sign up using my link, I do get a small kickback, but rest assured, they didn't sponsor this video. I've been paying for Readwise out of my own pocket for almost a year now. And since this is the ultimate review, there might be parts of the review that you just want to skip to, so there's timestamps below. With that being said, let's get into it. So before we get into it, let's just talk about the problem that Readwise actually solves. And what is this problem? Content overload. The truth is, we're drowning in content. Don't believe me? There's over 500 hours of content being uploaded on YouTube every single minute. There are more than 2,700 books being published every single day in the US. And with the rise of AI, just like ChatGPT and Google's Bard, we're about to get a lot more content, including faceless YouTube videos and low-quality BuzzFeed crappy listicles. Trust me, none of us need more BuzzFeed content. And this is the problem. With all this noise, how do we ensure great content doesn't just fade into oblivion, get lost into the abyss? How do we actually organize this content so that we can actually reference it for later and actually use it? Because real talk, nothing's worse than recalling a brilliant idea and not being able to remember that exact quote. Dude, it frustrates me so much. This happens every single time I try to remember a Hormozy tweet. He posts multiple times a day, but no one wants to scroll or control F their way to finding the exact quote. What if there was a better way? So it begs the point, especially in this informational age, keeping track of your information is more important than ever. And I'm glad I'm not the only person feeling this. While researching for this video, I came across the personal knowledge management communities, or PKM in short, where nerds like yours truly geek out over collecting, organizing, and making sense of all the information for personal use. Back in the OG days, I used to use something like Word, Evernote, or even Post-it notes, which was super inefficient, but I literally have them all over here. And I use these to track and manage my information. But with the explosion of information that we're getting today, these methods fall short and just feel very, very outdated. And yes, I've lost my fair share of sticky notes over the years. And if you are manually copying and pasting your information to Notion, Obsidian, or Roam, you know it's not a sustainable solution. It gets really old fast and will probably give you carpal tunnel in the future. So the real question is how can we efficiently collect, organize, and use this information? And that's when I found the original Readwise app. It was really great at scanning physical books, integrating it with my web highlights, and throwing it onto my Notion board. And yes, I'm throwing shade at you Roam and Obsidian users. I'm gonna get canceled. But it wasn't perfect. Readwise couldn't capture highlights from web articles like Instapaper or like Pocket did. So I found myself using multiple tools, paying for multiple subscriptions, and no one likes wasting money. Plus, I found myself just collecting the information with no way to actually use and distill insights from the content. So how do we make sense of these highlights, capture new forms of content, and make practical use of the information? And that's where Readwise Reader comes into play. So what is Readwise Reader to begin with? The truth is, as I was preparing this video, trying to describe Readwise, I was like, man, there's just so many things it does, but I think I figured it out. In short, Readwise Reader is the fix that you didn't know that you needed. The way I see it, it's a blend of a read it later app, a content organizer, a note annotator, and an AI tool. Not to mention, the text-to-speech is my personal bedtime storyteller, because who says being single at 35 doesn't mean that I get story time at all, right? I'm gonna be single forever. With Reader, I can just kiss goodbye to things like Instapaper, Pocket, and other read it later apps. It's even made some of my other go-to tools obsolete. For example, Annotate TV, which is the YouTube annotation app. To sum it up, Reader is just a super connector of Readwise. It allows you to connect to more sources that you want to capture, including podcasts, YouTube, tweets, and newsletters. It makes it all frictionless. I think that's a major thing. It's so much easier to connect than just using the original Readwise app. And the best part, it's actually got me reading a lot more, and it's way more fun too. I'm actually enjoying distilling and deriving my own unique insights from the content. And if you also watch Dan Koh as much as I do, then this is the exact process that he uses to gain his really unique perspectives on his newsletters. Now, I know you're thinking, okay, Kevin, cool story, but what's the real difference between Readwise and Readwise Reader? Honestly, I was just really scratching my head over the same question before I started this YouTube video, but here's the lowdown. Number one, Readwise is a killer data integration tool. It doesn't only capture just highlights from my physical books, but also integrates external apps like Instapaper, Snipped, and Shortform book summaries right into my Notion or personal knowledge management tool of my choice. It's also compatible with 23 plus other apps I'd never even heard of. Sure, Pocket and Instapaper offer free versions, making them a lot more accessible compared to Readwise Reader, but let's take a deeper dive into Readwise Reader and what it brings to the table. Readwise Reader has three functions. Number one, it's a read it later app and capture tool. So it replaces a lot of those external apps I was talking about and allows you to capture the highlights and articles directly on the web using a Chrome extension. It doesn't only just work for articles, but plays nice with Twitter, newsletters, your RSS feeder, YouTube videos, and sends content straight to your preferred acknowledgement managed tool. For me, it's Notion. And I think you can even send emails over there too. Number two, it provides an optimized reading experience. Not gonna lie, it looks a lot like Instapaper, but the cool thing is that has a cool inbox system like inbox, later, and archive, and some pretty cool views that are auto-populated as you import things. So let me kind of describe the three different views. Think about it like the classic YouTube subscribe button. And what's cool about it is that you can actually pull the RSS feed from your favorite YouTuber and just always have it in your reader. The second thing is library. So this is the content that you actually push into your reader. So if the feed is pulling, this is pushing. Think about it as your own vault of content that you've sourced from the internet. I like to think of my own personal Library of Alexandria. And the library is broken down into three subcategories. So the inbox is the landing pad for any content that I find. Usually a few times a week, usually on Sundays, I'll work my way through this list, eyeballing to see if each piece of content is something that I'm really interested in. If it's not, I just delete it right there. If it is useful, I'll highlight the key points, and then with a single click or swipe, I'll move the content to the later section. So what is this later section? Later, this is my stash of articles that pique my interest and are worth the time and investment for a good read. And so I'll take the key highlights and I'll write a summary or even reflect how this applies to my life. And then once I'm done, I'll move the file to archive. The archive, I like to think of long-term storage for articles. Once I've gone through them, highlighted the essentials, and processed them, they get moved to archives for any future references. So for example, if I save a Tiago Forte article about the second brain and I want to do a video later on the second brain, how to set one up, then I can pull this article with the highlights and have the exact quotes ready to go. What's the third thing that Readwise Reader does? So something cool about Readwise Reader is that it's packed with a lot of AI tools, so you can summarize an article to prevent you from copy and pasting in ChatGPT, which is annoying. It also has a really nice text-to-speech option, which doesn't sound like Microsoft 1995, and the Ghost Reader. And this is the AI system that summarizes your documents, but also can generate really thought-provoking questions and can create Q&A pairs based on a highlight that you have. While a lot of people say it's very helpful for research and studying, I find that it's really essential for content creation. I'll talk more about that later, but let's move on. So now that we know what Readwise Reader is, let's take a deeper look look on how the app actually works. So rather than just tell you about Readwise app, let's kind of go into it so I can just like show you it instead. So this is the Readwise app. You can tell that I really like Dan Koh a lot. I've been reading a lot of his works and all that sort of stuff too. But the first thing I notice about Readwise is that it's a very sleek design. If you're a dark mode user like me, then this is perfect. But anyways, let's go into thing, but you can also switch it to light mode, which is really bright. Yeah, it looks very, very similar to something like Instapaper. Okay, so let's go back. Let's change it back to dark mode. Now, the cool thing about Readwise is that it actually has, you can do everything from the keyboard. So notice you can do this. I can enter in a doc thing. If I want to tag it, I can tag that. If I want to do a note, test 1, 2, 3, it'll save as a note. And you can look it up over here. Here is a whole page on how keyboard shortcuts work in Readwise. To be honest, I'm still learning my shortcuts and hotkeys and stuff. If you have a typing speed like Ali Abdaal with a 156 words per minute, or your StarCraft legend with legendary APM, you can actually control the whole entire reader with just your keyboard and shortcuts. Okay, let's go into the next part, adding highlights. So let's look at how to actually save the highlights. There's a few ways to do it. So let's go on to a Dan Koh article today. We'll go here. I've like consumed so much Dan Koh. It's kind of crazy, but let's take a look. This is an article I haven't read so far with Dan Koh. And the cool thing is that Readwise has something called Readwise Highlighter. So you just press it, and what it'll do is it'll actually sync to your reader and your Readwise integration. So for example, if I highlight this, the path of an NPC, yeah, let's say if I really like this passage a lot, you can just highlight it like this and then add a highlight, and I have auto highlighting on. So you can toggle this on and off. For example, if I were to get rid of this again, you can actually highlight like this and then manually highlight. Sorry, I'm on a glass thing, but I like to have it on. And from here, you can actually comment. So this is a video game analogy with productivity. And this is where the second brain comes into play, because you can actually type in all this sort of stuff too. Personal story. When I was in college, clubbing, failing my classes, and watching Korn all the time. Right, I'm gonna delete this later, but okay, I save, right? And so you can do it inside the web page itself, or if you give it a little bit, it will actually, and it's supposed to sync up all the highlights. Oh, they weren't able, yes, it has a highlight here, but for some reason it was a little buggy, so it didn't work that time. But if I wanna do the same thing, I can do this here, and you can add notes to it here. Like I can add the same note that I wanted to, but still kept the notes inside here too. So if you see my previous note here, it's right over there. Personally, I like to do everything through the reader. And then also something cool is that you can just like tag certain things too. So let's say this is about productivity. I have a tag for it now, and you can do document tags too, which is really, really cool. So with the Readwise Highlight Chrome extension, what's really cool is that you can use this or the mobile app to import articles or web clippings. And these highlights will actually sync to the Readwise Reader, to the Readwise, and ultimately my Notion board that I have. I would say one thing that kind of sucks is that it is a little bit slow. So sometimes you might have to manually import something just to get it in the dashboard. So now that's done, and you see my article on the NPC is all here with all my tags, and it also has my personal story here too. So it's really, really cool. Some unique features, which we'll talk about, is like you can actually invoke the Ghost Reader, which we'll talk about soon, which is their special AI tool that Readwise uses. But in my opinion, it is so valuable just having everything sync up to my Notion board. And if I ever switch over to a different thing like Obsidian or something like that, I'm able to make that change like pretty instantaneously. So all my changes go into my Readwise board. So let's talk about unique features. So Twitter is one of the most underrated platforms, especially as a creator. I get so many cool ideas from like personal development to business advice to self-actualization content, which is really, really nice. So let's say I really like this Hormozy tweet. What I'll do is I'll actually open this up and I'll do a Readwise export here, and suddenly it'll be in your reader and it'll also sync up to your Notion board. If you're kind of curious how it works on mobile, I'll show you right here. Hormozy, who else do I like? This quote about getting so much done is so true. So what I'll do is actually share this to share via Reader. And there we go. Now I can read it. And as you can see through my phone, this is all saved in here and I can toggle it. And as you can see, my tweet just uploaded into my Readwise. Another cool thing about Readwise is that if you subscribe to any newsletters, you can actually import it by copying this and forwarding the email over. You can upload different books, PDFs, which is very, very helpful. The cool thing is that once it's uploaded, then you can actually add notes and annotate just like I showed you before. And it also shows a chapter list, which makes it really, really easy to navigate to. Something that I am starting to use a lot is like RSS feeds. So for example, Dan Koh is like one person I'm following right now, but I can actually add a feed in here. So anytime he uploads something, I can just import it into my second brain or my Readwise Reader. And a cool thing too, all YouTube channels have RSS feeds, so you can actually import any cool YouTube videos in here too. And you can also subscribe to a Twitter list and all that too. Also, if you want to import some of your regular emails, you're more than happy to do that too. Speaking about RSS feeds or suggested feeds, you can actually subscribe to them there by inserting the URL. You can also subscribe to email newsletters just using this email. So it'll just empty out your email inbox and just go straight to the Readwise Reader. Personally, I don't prefer this because like I don't always get to my reader type of stuff. But if you are the type of person that likes their things in silos, it works really, really well. And if you want to subscribe to a public Twitter list, you can also do that too. Now, a unique feature I've been talking a lot about is the YouTube feature. With YouTube, users can actually add YouTube videos to Readwise Reader. So the cool thing, as you can see, it actually transcribes the actual video, which you can tag and all that, which is very, very helpful if you're kind of like a visual reader like I am. And you can actually quote things, you can highlight notes while watching. And this actually replaced my app that I was talking about earlier, annotate.tv. A really, really small thing that is really cool about Readwise Reader is that it also gives you the progress bar, meaning like if I'm reading this and I'm just like, oh man, I'm running low on time, I might want to go back to this, I can just refer to the progress bar too. So it'll tell you how much time is left in the article and other metadata that can be edited in the tool. So we can actually edit the metadata, and if I like one author a lot, I'll write Alex Hormozy and it will link to all the Alex Hormozy stuff. It's really, really interesting. I haven't seen any other app kind of do this, especially for media like this. So these are the basic functions of Readwise. So let's go into organization. So if we go onto home screen, we can see a few different tabs. Continue reading, recently added, quick reads as well if you're in a rush, and kind of the new things that are happening in your feed. This is basically everything that is like kind of been happening since you last left. I find it very, very helpful. There's also a system where you have inbox, later, and archive. How I use this for the second brain is all my inbox stuff, like when it gets dumped, I'll put it in here, I'll read in here, and what will happen is I will highlight everything, and then also after everything's highlighted, I'll actually add a summary of what the thing is about and a personal example. And usually from here, I'll throw it into archive, where all the stuff that I've kind of culminated and just like went through and added to my second brain goes here. It's very, very helpful. You also have something called a shortlist. You also have filtered views, and you can create your own filtered views and stuff, but default it comes with quick reads, articles, tweets, and all that sort of stuff too. And you can also manage all the tags that you have as well, and then manage your feeds here too. What I find is the filter view just really, really helps me kind of organize the content a little bit better, although I'm not the perfect example of this. So let's go into coolest function. Let's talk about the AI, the Ghost Reader. So Readwise Reader has its own AI system. It's called the Ghost Reader. And what's really cool about this is that if you press G, it will do some prompts, right? Or if you actually just right click or you click and you can invoke Ghost Reader, it can do really, really cool things. So it can simplify what was already written, summarize, translate if it's a different language. We can do a TLDR, and what it will do is like popular advice, niche down, overwhelming for beginners. Interesting. We can also do multiple things. So if we want to do something like a haiku, see what this brings up. Niche down, they say. Advice causing confusion, beginners worry. So funny. The one I most often do is like summarize, because part of the second brain is just summarizing things and into my own words. So really like this feature a lot. So some of the features, you can summarize documents, generate thought-provoking questions, and generate question Q&A pairs too. Now, this is another function that I like about Readwise quite a bit. Right now, it's only on mobile, but if I go on Readwise and let's say I want to read a Hormozy tweet.
For anyone struggling to get work done, you'd be amazed how much can finish when you set a timer for 45 minutes and turn off your notifications.
So that's a Hormozy tweet. So for text-to-speech, there's two voices. There's Ray, which is the female one that you heard, and then there's Finley.
View content up right arrow. You have been copying people since you were born. That's how you learn to operate in society.
And then something else you can do is actually speed it up too. So let me 2.5x it, which is going to sound super fast.
One path of the NPC or non-character is an individual that is a slave programming. They never question leaves.
Probably a little too fast for most people, but that is an option. Personally, I find this really convenient if you're at the gym, you're working out, you just don't feel like you're trying to reduce your on-time screen, or as I'm going to sleep too. Another cool thing is that there's a lot of integrations. You can integrate to Instapaper, Twitter, Pocket, and OpenAI if you have an OpenAI account, which I have not set up yet because I have a pro account. But that's a cool thing. If anybody does a tweet storm, it'll all be saved into Reader too. Finally, since everything from Readwise Reader is automatically sent to Readwise, what's really, really cool is you have all these other tools. So if you use Roam, use Obsidian, use Evernote, and all those other things, you actually just import it like that. And that's the most powerful thing. It works seamlessly across personal knowledge management integrations as well. Okay, so far so good, right? But is this really gonna help you? Are you really gonna get your money's worth? All right. So let's talk about the pros of Readwise Reader. So number one, it saves money by reducing apps. Here's a screenshot of all the apps extensions I have on my Chrome. Yeah, it's a ton of stuff. So if you can't tell, I'm a premium subscription fiend. But enter Readwise Reader. So it's helped cut back a lot of my subscriptions, replacing apps like Air, Snipped, Instapaper, the Notion Chrome extension, Annotate.tv, and Pocket. And it's not only replaced these apps, but does it way better. So the Readwise web highlighting Chrome extension has become my go-to tool. It streamlines Tiago Forte's second brain process. This is the approach where you have a digital repository of all your learning materials like I was mentioning earlier, but the hardest part is actually implementing it. And that's the challenge. Tiago Forte uses the CODE method, which stands for capture, organize, distill, and express. But for people like me, I found myself only capturing and I would just skip the rest. And so I would never get down to the true value of the second brain, which was distilling the ideas and then expressing it, being able to apply it and create my own thoughts as well. Because I always told myself, I'll just get back to it later. And I never did. And this is where Readwise really helps me out. It basically provides a central inbox for all my reading material and makes sure that I can capture and organize within the app and making it a breeze. The hurdle that I used to face all the time was with distilling and expressing, but it's no more due to the annotation and filter features of Readwise. So all I need to do these days is press the letter N and then I can annotate a certain highlight that I captured. And the important thing that I realized with this app, it makes it really effortless to annotate notes, but also has filters to make it easier to read and prioritize and archive. Number two, Readwise is included with Readwise subscriptions. So in the last Readwise video, I said that, but just because I can afford it, it doesn't mean I can't get over the fact that it feels like I'm paying for a really expensive Zapier. But I've really had a change of heart since they released Reader. Reader has saved me money on other subscriptions. Like in the past, I used to pay for Annotate.tv, which was $5 per month. But since Readwise at the time of this shooting is $8 and it makes the process way more frictionless, I'm more than happy to pay for that for less than a cup of coffee. Well, maybe not in this economy. So the next pro, next level AI tools. I mean, have you noticed a trend? Every single app is talking about AI features, including things like Notion and all that too. And so at first, it just seems like, hey, Readwise Reader is no different from any of the other softwares by adding AI tools into the service. At the time of this writing, Readwise bases its prompts off the Chat GPT 3.5 model when 4 is out already, but I have no doubts that they'll update in the future. So right now you can actually summarize documents, generate thought-provoking questions, and create Q&A pairs based on a highlight. And what I found is that all these really help content creators like me. And by having everything in the app, app, which is perfect. I don't have to literally go Command C, Command V. And if you ever had to manually copy and paste in ChatGPT, we all know the annoying character limit that we always hit. Readwise Reader helps bypass all of that. The next pro about Readwise Reader is it's easy to save tweets. You know, for the longest time, I was actually really struggling saving tweets. It was always a hassle. I think the old process I used to use was with the Notion Chrome extension. I would export it to my Notion board, select the destination board, and then I would hope that I wouldn't lose it, which I inevitably always did. And yes, I could search all my Notion boards with the search function, but that wasn't super effective. And my tweets don't get lost in the abyss. It keeps it all in one central place, and all I gotta do is use the web app or just share it to Reader with the immobile app, and it's all there. The next pro, oh my god, this one's major for me particularly, is effortless YouTube studying. So if you can't tell, I want to be the next YouTube sensation. But something Mr. Beast talks about is actually spending an hour a day just studying YouTube and studying how like people do their hooks, how do they do their cuts and all that sort of stuff. But to be honest, there was no easy way to do this. It was a very cumbersome process where I would open up a Notion page, right? I would have to copy and paste the links into my Notion board, and then I would never look at them ever again. So with Reader, it makes studying YouTube a breeze. Not only do you get the transcripts, you can annotate the notes, and if you click a certain word, then it'll jump to that scene. And this feature is so good that I'm even thinking about adding this into my jujitsu tape study, where I can break things frame by frame and just go over techniques, and then even share these type of things with my friends, or maybe even make it a paid service in the future. Who knows? But I really do wish that they were able to do non-YouTube videos as well. Hopefully that's a future feature. The next pro is human-like text-to-speech option. So I'm not sure if you've ever done this, but for me, have you ever YouTubed a audiobook only to have it sound like a computer from the 1990s?
And you'll also discover that Japan is a treasure trove of traditional craft work.
To me, I'm not a fan. But with Readwise Reader, the text-to-speech option just sounds very, very human. And where I find myself using it the most are those long drives, those gym sessions. And plus, you can choose a voice, although at the time of this writing, they only have two different voices, a male one and a female one too. Hopefully in the future, Readwise will strike a deal with Morgan Freeman and just like have that as a narration. The other thing that I really appreciate about Readwise too are the app integrations. As I mentioned in my last review, Readwise connects to over 32 apps. And I think this is a real value of Readwise because it just integrates with almost every single app I use, making it really easy just to migrate over. I mean, I'm not sure if you ever had to use a different app that wasn't connected and then you're just like, oh man, I'm gonna lose all this data. But it syncs up all my data from all the years that I've been using Instapaper and all that and just puts it in Reader, which is a lifesaver. And cool thing, if you actually saw my short form review, then it actually seamlessly integrates with that too. The last thing, probably the smallest but most important thing, is the progress bar at the bottom. I know this is a very, very small one, but what I found myself doing is like, especially when I would have like a long reading session, or if I was short on time, I could just like look at the bottom and it would either A, give me extra motivation to finish an article, or B, just come back to it if I'm in a time crunch. So that's really helpful. And I just have to say major props to the Readwise team for just adding extra features to the current Readwise members. They could have just charged for a separate service for a reader, but they decided to just take care of us. So I appreciate that, Readwise. Thank you. It's easy to export to other personal knowledge management tools. So if you're like a Roam or Obsidian user just watching this video and you're like, I really want to move to Notion, it's easy. Since everything is in Readwise, all you need to do is export to your PKM of choice. So if, for example, I ever want to try out Roam or Obsidian, I can just set up my account and then export all my highlights, all my ideas through there. So that's why I really like keeping it within the ecosystem. Yes, it keeps me attached to the ecosystem of Readwise, but just makes everything so effortless for me to do. Okay, so those are all the pros. What are some of the problems with Readwise that I see? The cons of Readwise Reader. To be honest, it was very, very hard coming up with the cons with Readwise Reader, but here are the things that I thought you should be aware if you are considering Readwise Reader that might be a deal killer. So first of all, it's another paid subscription. As I mentioned before, Readwise Reader doesn't follow the freemium model like Instapaper or Pocket. And at the time of this writing, at $8 per month with potential price increases, it may not be affordable to everyone, and that's okay. Yes, I was that broke college student. I spent like years in pharmacy school and all that. It wasn't very fun. But the silver lining is that Readwise actually offers a academic discount. And Readwise also includes Reader if you're already a subscriber. If you want the discount, All you need to do is sign up, hopefully with my affiliate link ideally, and email hello@readwise.io, and you'll need to send them a proof of student ID or an educational email address. What will happen is that they'll partially refund you and make sure that the discount is applied going forward. Another con, not all the functions are cross-platform. So being new, Readwise has a few bugs. For instance, you can't upload the PDFs from the mobile app at the time of this recording, and the text-to-speech function or the bedtime function only works on mobile. But the good news, I would have to say I've looked at a lot of different softwares, and the team has been updating us with bugs that they fix like almost every 4 weeks. And they send us these email because I think we're the beta team. So I'm pretty sure a lot of these bugs will be resolved. All in all, it's kind of hard to find serious faults with Readwise. I do wish that there was like a note-taking option where I could just like put in my own thoughts in there or like insert my own pictures into the Readwise ecosystem. I wish we could upload non-YouTube videos into the ecosystem, but those are small gripes. So it's one thing for me to just tell you my thoughts about Readwise Reader, but what are other people saying? So let's dive into other reviews. So I went to the Apple Store and it currently has a score of 4.1 of 5 with 15 reviews. And I looked at the most recent top review and the bottom reviews too. So let's kind of dive into it. So this was a bottom review. Someone said, pretty much a waste of time for me. We're always seeking new information in new diverse ways. The foundational idea of read it later apps is that you'll read something enough where you'll want to read it more when you have more time. So Reader to this person is an extra inbox that sits between actual input and you. It can send information to other apps, most of which have own mechanisms for obtaining, storing, and organizing data. I suppose that you could spend a lot of time moving information around, perhaps classifying it. It doesn't seem robust enough to handle a volume I need or granularity of classification. Cost seems high too. Some of the complaints that they made was that Reader is an extra inbox that sits between you and the actual output, which I look at as like kind of a pro because like sometimes you want to have all your reading in one place, kind of like the Marie Kondo method of everything has its own home. They also said it doesn't seem robust enough to handle a volume or classification, and I'm actually the other way. Like perfectly honest, like I feel like it's sometimes too much and like the tags and all that is just like overwhelming and prevents me from actually doing things. So I think it's actually too robust sometimes. And the one thing I will agree is like the cost is kind of high. Something cool I checked with the team is while this doesn't apply to everyone, they do offer 50% discounts to those who are in education, nonprofit employees, and those in developing countries. So if you kind of fall into those things, make sure that you kind of take advantage of that. Now let's look at the top review by Rob Chadwick. Something that Rob really liked was that the RSS reader was top notch. Some things that Rob actually mentioned was that he really liked the RSS feed idea. And then also, this is probably the best at the moment, the text to voice speech, even though there's just 2 options. And then he also mentions lifetime pricing where you can get locked in on your current deal if you buy right now too. Something I do also agree with Rob too is the multi-select. It's really, really hard. So let's say if I want to select these 2 things, I can't do it, right? But also it makes it way, way harder maybe for keyboard shortcuts, but that is a feature that I would like to see in the future. So in addition to App Store, I actually looked at the top and worst comments from the creators who beat me to a punch with Readwise Reader. Can't really blame Readwise because I threw it on my back burner for 6 months, but hey, things happen. Douglas says, I'm a huge fan of Readwise, that I onboarded several users when I was in private. It changed how I read and it made me a more active reader, which I would really, really agree. One of the biggest things for me is that I would actually never go to my highlights in Instapaper. I would never put notes or anything like that. And it's really, really cool just sourcing from like YouTube and all that. Our Venice says, I've seen a lot of people use this workflow and I don't understand the value is. When I read articles online, I just have one screen and Obsidian open on a different screen. As I read the articles, I take notes straight into Obsidian, later process them into notes into Atomic Notes. I don't understand the value of highlighting an article and going back to the article later. And everybody does things different, right? Like like for me, I like a more seamless type of thing. So if I'm like out and about, if I'm going for a walk, I don't have like my freaking MacBook over here and my freaking iPad over here and just like reading on the street. Usually like I want something more seamless, but everybody has different use cases. And definitely our Venice, your thing isn't wrong either. Addie Clark said, so delighted that I can now highlight directly on the page. This is a massive game changer. This is actually really, really nice. Like I love being able to just to highlight on the web page and in the reader too. And typically, unlike the example I showed you, it was a little bugged. Mark Acero really likes the keyboard shortcuts, which I'm still learning, but once you get the hang of it, it's super, super quick. So is it actually worth paying for Readwise? This is the $1 million question. So if you're like me and consume a lot of different digital content, you need a system to capture, review, and integrate your highlights into a personal knowledge management system. Readwise Reader could be a game changer. But if you're more of a casual reader, maybe you're reading for fun, maybe you're reading some Harry Potter books, and your note-taking needs are just minimal, or you just find yourself just reading like once a year, you probably don't need it then. But for those people who value the ability to save the highlight and revisit key information from reading materials, it actually justifies the cost, in my opinion. For just 2 bougie coffees a month, I can have this whole system, and it helps me actually further refine my ideas, increase my productivity, and just create better content for the masses. But if you're still wondering, is it worth it? Your best bet is just to take it for a spin, since they offer a free trial. And in addition, this actually locks in your pricing too that I was talking about earlier. But for those seeking my personal take, here's who I would recommend it to. 1, you're a Notion nerd and personal knowledge management app enthusiast. So for me, I'm all about minimalism, keeping things very, very simple. And the only subscriptions I pay for now are short form, which are the book summaries, Readwise, which includes the original app and the reader, and Notion. That's it. No more juggling multiple apps, forgetting my passwords, or aimlessly scrolling just to find that one insight. Damn, those Hormozy tweets. 2, you're an online creator. Maybe you're a YouTuber, maybe you're a blogger, maybe you write an email newsletter, or maybe you're all three like the GOAT, Dan Koh. The truth is, no one really likes staring at a blank page with that blinking cursor wondering, well, what should I talk about today? That's happened to me way too many times. And so when I need inspiration or want to reference a source, I can find the primary source easily because it's connected to my whole Notion database. Reader just helps me curate better content and credit original authors, something in the internet world that no one does for some reason. I don't know why. And oftentimes I'll just find myself saving tweets, articles, podcasts, and books for future newsletters and inspiration. The AI tools make summarizing articles and creating Q&As just such a breeze. And don't take my word for it. This is Dan Koh. He spends a lot of his afternoons just consuming content for inspiration for his multi-six-figure business. After being in P2IA, I also noticed that Ali Abdaal actually takes a lot of quotes or inspirations compiled from his Readwise. And just like the great book, Steal Like an Artist, I've done the same thing for my newsletters too. Number 3, you are a researcher or student. So I shared this back with my other Readwise review, but back in pharmacy school, I would have times where I would need to cite something or I would have to pull up a random fact from the year before. But since I didn't have a really good note-taking system, I would just like give up and just be like, you know what? That's like from last year, forget about it. But Reader makes it just a lot easier to batch my research process. Even as I was preparing for this video, I was scouring the internet on Readwise Reader articles and reviews and Medium articles. And ironically, Readwise Reader was helping me collect all these things in one place. I would throw YouTube videos, article, tweets into my main inbox and just delete the things that weren't helpful. I'll tag if I'm super ambitious and move it into later so I can highlight and distill my thoughts and archive when I'm done. And then when I need to pull up something, I just go to my Notion board since it's all there. So I can see Readwise Reader just being helpful when I was a student back in the day. And plus, how can you resist that sweet, sweet academic discount that Readwise offers to its students and members of academia? And if you want to take advantage of this academic discount, just use my link, ideally, and thank you if you do use it. And then email hello@readwise.io with your ID or school email. Next, you're a second brain nerd who is capturing all the time. So prior to Reader, I loved having the idea of my own Notion library of ideas, and I was obsessed with capturing everything because I just didn't want to lose it. It was really great because all I needed to do was just use the search function in my Notion and I was good. But the problem was that I was just collecting everything and I would look up these resources, but I would never really organize my ideas into actionable steps. With Reader, I can easily manage these steps. The next person that would find Readwise Reader really beneficial is if you want to switch personal knowledge management apps in the future. So I get it, you're unhappy with Roam and Obsidian and you want to switch to Roam. By the way, JK, I've never actually used Roam or Obsidian, so I'm just throwing shade at y'all just because of my ignorance. So please forgive me if you're offended. I don't mean it. So like I said, I've never used Roam, Obsidian, or other tools, but if I ever do, I'm happy knowing that everything that I'm storing in Readwise can actually be instantly transferred to another app. In my opinion, this is the biggest benefit because you're not tied to just one personal knowledge management app. At the end of the day, personally for me, after using Readwise Reader, I find myself actually actually reading a lot more, saving a lot more time, and just using what I'm actually learning. The major things that did it for me were being able to save money on subscriptions, the AI tools, and just a way to actually organize my ideas so I can actually do the second brain kind of correctly, and instead of just being a poser. It also helped knowing that I had a subscription to Readwise already, which I already love things like the OCR reader and app integration. Anyways, if you want to check out the Readwise Reader, check out my affiliate link in the description below. And if you are thinking about Reader, you should definitely watch my video about if Readwise is actually worth it. It's an integration app that you get with Reader, so might as well check it out. Anyways, stay compassionate, stay authentic, stay rebellious. Peace.